Trinidad and Tobago. Let me just find out from my producer if that photocopy parang offering for 2017, is that a new one? Is that something that is relatively new, or is it okay, brand new for 2017? Someone deciding that they're going to take an old pop classic from the 1970s, add some Trini style parang lyrics to it and present it as something original. Do the union leaders have anything original for us in 2017 heading into 2018? Well, we'll find out, because we're joined now by the Chief Education and Research Officer of the Oilfield Workers Union, Ozzi Warwick. As I mentioned, remember we spoke to him on the phone last week, and as I was certainly looking forward to an opportunity to speak for a lot longer with him on the many issues of the day. And before I introduce him properly, you know, a lot of people right now, a lot of people are saying, why are you going to give these union people all this time? Why not? So the business people must get all the time, the politicians must get all the time, the sports people must get all the time. Why the union people can't get a fair amount of time to discuss the issues on the table? Huh? Morning, Ozzy.
Thank you very much, Fazzy. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you with us.
Looking forward to this morning's discussion.
Sure. I mean, and let's put it on the table right away. The OWTU and its advocacy. Isn't it just about grand charge? Are you putting on a show to at least be seen to be doing something? Is the union actually achieving anything by all of this demonstration and parading dollies with presenting to be calm imbut and so on? Isn't it very childish of the union to be doing that sort of thing?
Not at all. Let me first say that, of course, the OWTU, 80 years in existence. I think sometimes we seem to forget that. And therefore, we span a long period from colonialism all the way through independence, republicanism. And we have been very consistent in terms of our position with regards to governance, the economy, and how workers and poor and ordinary people are treated.
Let me challenge you right. Sorry to take, but let me challenge you right there, because you say you've been consistent. From my own observation of the last few years, the only consistent element of the OWTU is just before an election, back in the opposition, and then finding yourself betrayed when the government goes into office.
No, I mean, if you look at our consistency, it has to do with how we have taken action with regards to bad governance. Now, of course... But
you all have been part of the bad governance, because you all backed the winning horse, and then you all turn out to realize you have a donkey in charge.
Well, I don't know that we backed the winning horse. What we did, what we sought to do, and I think this was very important, we sought to engage the various political parties, because people only remember the MOU with the PNM because they won. But we also signed an MOU with the ILP. We also had a meeting with the MSJ and discussed their economic policies and agreed that many of it are very consistent with our line of thinking. So people cannot conveniently forget certain facts.
Sure.
And what did we seek to do? And this is what I want us to discuss a little bit this morning, Fazil. Sure. We foresaw the pending economic crisis, because the OWTU, as I said, have been consistent, and we've stated, listen, our economy continues to be a plantation economy. We consume what we do not produce, we produce what we do not consume. And then we have an open economy. We opened up the economy in the 1990s, but when we opened the economy, we didn't properly prepare in order for us to take advantage of an open economy. Instead, what we did is we opened the economy and increased exponentially imports. We also created, with our plantation economy, a situation of inequality in wealth and inequality in income. Now, in 2015, as far back as then, we said, listen, our economy is not growing. When we looked at the energy sector, the manufacturing sector, well, you don't talk about the agricultural sector, there was no growth in the economy, even though oil prices were high. So oil prices, or high oil prices, does not necessarily mean growth in the economy. So we said, listen, at that point in time, we need to transform the economy. With that decline in the growth rate over the years, we felt that it was time for us to engage in a discussion as to how we transform the economy, and that did not happen. In other words, the fall in oil prices now, the fall in oil commodity prices now, are symptomatic of an economic crisis within Trinidad and Tobago. And here's what compounds it. We have a governance crisis. And what we sought to do
is the union movement, the labor movement, part of that governance crisis because of their archaic attitudes towards labor issues and more money, and not focusing on the broader issues of the changing economy.
But we can't say that when we look again at the facts. We have taken stance on the issues of governance. In case people forget, the Section 34 issue, that had nothing to do with money. The issue of corruption, that had nothing to do with money. The fact that the union presented a proposal for labor's alternative economic plan, that has nothing to do with money. The fact that workers in key state enterprise that the OWTU represent took stands with regards to the governance structure of those entities, one in the country, one in the governments, past and present, that the governance situation in these state enterprises is not working to the benefit of the people. That has nothing to do with money.
But
so at many occasions, we took stands on issues that are not money related.
Correct, absolutely correct. But Ozzy, at the very start of 2017, the standoff at Petrotrin had to do with money. And after all of the grand charge, Ansel Roger they signed on the dotted line and the strike was called off. So wasn't that a classic example of an organization that is collapsing, that is bankrupt, and all you're all interested in is money?
Well, I'm glad you raised that point, because yesterday there was a particular newspapers that carried a particular editorial that completely shows us exactly where the business community headspace is at with regards to state enterprise. Let me just take you back. The OWTU stood against the WGTL investment. We said that that is not what is good for Petrotrin or the country. That was the OWTU. Now, that has nothing to do with money issues with regards to the workers, but the workers recognize that poor management decisions and a bad investment could lead to the company, the entity, the state entity being in trouble. That was before 2010. Instead, what the government did is, and the management together, invested in a project that failed, that cost the company. The union again in 2011 presented a proposal to restructure the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago.
Did that restructuring include the reduction of the workforce at Petrotrin?
Well, what we identify as the crisis in Petrotrin had to do with the governance of Petrotrin.
You're answering the question.
No, I am answering it.
So in other words, no. In other words, no. You want restructuring, but everybody must still have a job, even though it remains inefficient.
No, well, first of all, you have to restructure the governance, Fazir. When you restructure the governance...
So it's okay to have plenty of people sitting around doing nothing and getting paid?
Well, it's not a case of people sitting around doing nothing. Those workers are working and risking their life in order to bring this key important resource from the wells, whether offshore or onshore, so that you'll be able to have your gasoline, your kerosene, your LPG, etc.
So because of that, I should be grateful that people are that Petrotrin is overstaffed? Is that what you're trying to imply?
No, I'm saying that you should be grateful that you have an OWTU making sure that we secure the key resources of this country and making sure that these resources are utilized and maximized to the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago, which brings me to the editorial yesterday.
Yes.
So you have a situation where the union have been talking about these lease and farm out operators, that a system that is open for corruption. We said that. We said that that is not the right way to go. What you want to do is to improve and increase your indigenous oil production. That is what the union was saying. And this scandal is broken in terms of where you have monies being expended from a state entity that says it is in trouble for oil not received.
Yes.
The workers said, no. We've been talking about this for a long time. We need to take a stand now in order to secure this precious asset of Trinidad and Tobago. And when those workers took a stand about 2 days ago in order to protect this important state enterprise, you have commentators and editorials condemning the workers, you know.
Why should we protect Petrotrin? Because if you talk about...
I'll tell you why.
Let me preface it. Why should we protect Petrotrin if you're talking about being visionary in a global environment where the world is moving towards renewable resources of energy, and this fixation with oil, to a less extent natural, this fixation with oil, we're going to be left behind like the dinosaurs. Why should we be pouring all our efforts into preserving Petrotrin?
Well, I don't know that we are channeling all our efforts into preserving Petrotrin. What we are saying is that we have to preserve it in this moment in time as we move towards transforming the economy. And why? Because this entity, regardless of what people say at the moment, between 2011 2014 contributed $16 billion to the Treasury. We can't forget that.
How much is the debt right now, Ozzy? How much is the debt right now?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the debt.
You
raised the debt, so I'm ready to get into that
what
discussion.
I'm trying to get at is, how does an entity, when it was making so much money,
end up in debt?
So much money, oil price $148 per barrel in 2008, profits after profits after profits, windfall after windfall. How does an entity end up in so much debt now that it is pulling the entire economy down? How does that happen?
It happens when management decisions are taken that are against the interests of the entity itself. It happens when you have political interference into state enterprises by politicians, which is not in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago, but in the interest of their party. That is why that happens. And even in terms of the debt, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
If you have a debt and you want to restructure your debt, you cannot go back to your creditors with the same structure. So the union, the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, developed a proposal which says, listen, let us restructure the governance model of the company so that at least you can go back to your creditors to renegotiate the terms of your debt and show them, listen, we have changed, we have restructured, and this is the vision, this is how we intend to improve and increase production, etc. And that, up to now, the government has not shown a real interest in taking on board those proposals. So how do you expect to renegotiate this debt if you're not restructuring the company?
But again, Ozzy, we're going to take a break very shortly, because when we take that break, we'll return to our discussion. We're not going anywhere. Ozzi Warwick is staying with us during the course of the first hour. Doesn't the fundamental restructuring of any organization in the economic climate of Trinidad and Tobago right now, whether public sector or private sector, must of necessity include an analysis of the size of the workforce?
It includes an analysis of the governance structure and management system. But you just jump in. You see what is happening?
No, I jump in. Because it seems that you want to avoid the issue.
No, I'm not avoiding. You see, I am actually on point with the issue. I'm just saying, listen, in any restructuring exercise, you don't skip the key governance systems, management systems, supervision systems, and jump straight to, okay, let's just send workers.
Correct. Okay, the management, you see the management there at Petrotrin, the management at WASA, the management at all of them that losing money, they have to go, it has to be redone, and it has to be leaner and meaner. Doesn't the same leaner and meaner apply to the workforce?
But how can you determine that now without the proper analysis of the governance structure and
the
management system? I am not avoiding. I'm just saying.
So basically, you're saying that you don't want to admit.
I am prioritizing.
That in the public sector, you don't want to admit that these entities are overstaffed and unproductive at all levels, management right down to the work on the shop floor. Overstaffed and inefficient and unproductive. And
we are saying that in order for you to fix that, you have to first restructure the management, but also the governance. You see, it's not just management is also symptomatic of the governance crisis. You know, there's a real crisis in governance in Trinidad and Tobago with regards to the state enterprises, how the boards are appointed, how decisions are made at the level of the board, what is the government policy and vision for the entity. What has happened, and this is an uncomfortable conversation, is that these state enterprises have also been used by politicians as for political patronage.
Well, that's what they're there for.
No, they're not there for that. They are there with the union.
What are they there for?
Let me be clear. For the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, those state enterprises are there to provide a service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Have they done so?
That's our position. And I would say that in a great regards, yes. We are also saying that if we have fixed the governance crisis, if we fix the management systems within these state enterprise, they can deliver even more. They have delivered for Trinidad and Tobago,
we have to take a break, but let me just ask you a question very quickly. If there was to be this in 2018, they wake up and grow a conscience and say we need to look at the management issue, and they were to change the governance structure, include the union movement in it, and the end result of that governance reformed governance structure is that we need to streamline our staff. Would the union support that?
But why wouldn't the outcome be a better and more efficient way to maximize the staff that you have? I'm trying to understand why the inevitable outcome that we seem to always go towards is to send the ordinary worker home when you can say, wait.
Well, no, I said send management home too.
No, I'm not talking about you, Fazira.
Yeah.
Sorry. The you is the general. It's a general you, not you.
Right.
However, but what if we actually restructure the governance and we reorganize management systems and put proper things in place and we remove these entities from political interference, we can actually have a more efficient entity with the staff that we have.
We're going to go to a break and continue the discussion because there are a lot of issues on the table,
yes,
including a call to boycott certain companies, businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, which we'll touch on. I suspect that we'll run out of time even before we talk about the many issues we have on the table when we talk about the labor movement, because we're talking about the economy, we're talking about ordinary people, we're talking about those are the higher ups, the commanding heights of the economy, and so many other things. 6:39 in Trinidad and Tobago, approaching 6:40. We'll be back right after the break, continuing our discussion with Ozzi Warwick.
Underneath your roof's beauty is its structure and strength. ZNC Purlins work year after year to keep your roof strong and intact. Using inferior purlins can lead to collapsed, rusted, or blown-off roofs. Island Roofing's ZNC purlins are TTBS approved, with the industry standard of zinc coating to resist rust and remain durable longer. So when you want ZNC purlins, invest in the best for your roof. Island Roofing ZNC Purlin, available at leading hardwares.
Christmas is right around the corner, and the Christmas Shopping Festival at the White Tent opposite Center of Excellence Mokoya is your one-stop shop from December 1st to 24th, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Check us out for a wide range of toys and gifts, handicrafts, home decor, clothing, footwear, and much more, all under one roof. Enjoy daily entertainment. Don't be left behind this Christmas. Be sure to visit us at the Christmas Shopping Festival at the White Tent opposite Center of Excellence Mokoya from December 1st to 24th. Admission is absolutely free.
To support your heart health, there's lots you can do, like exercising and taking an omega supplement, which helps support cardiovascular health. That's why at Jameson, we recommend taking it daily. So get started. Too fast! Look for Jameson Omegas.
'Tis the season to receive the perfect gift, or two, or three. At Value Optical, share joy and happiness with a free frame or polarized lenses and other offers. It's the perfect gift for you and your entire family. See online, press, and in-store for more details. Merry Christmas from Value Optical, caring for your eyes.
TV6 presents a recipe for great TV. First we add a healthy serving of news.
5 bodies have been discovered, all
Then some justice.
Welcome to another program of Beyond the Tape on TV6.
A pinch of intrigue. Lots of laughter. Raw entertainment and smackdown action. And of course, some local flavor.
Feeling for Portugals because the journey requires...
For the perfect mix on CCN TV6.
There is a rhythm to life. It is what we feel. It is how we care. It is what we dare, making ourselves unique. Day by day, this is what we do. We are here for you. Call Fire covers.
Being in tune with the pulse of TNT and the world, that is what allows me to make good decisions. With the Express on hand, I have access to the facts, the figures, the trends. First, the columnists, they deliver without fear or favor and offer perspectives that I may not have thought of. With that kind of insight, I always make the right moves at the right time.
The Express, the national newspaper of Trinidad and Tobago. Get it first.
6:42, approaching 6:43 in Trinidad and Tobago. Continuing our discussion with the Chief Education Research Officer at the OWTU and the Secretary of JTUM, the Joint Trade Union Movement, Ozzi Warwick. Ozzi, we could spend an eternity talking about, arguing about philosophies and so on with unions and workers' rights and all that sort of thing. But let's talk about what the union has to offer on the way forward for Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. When the commodity prices fell in 2015, of course, we haven't realized that we were heading towards that direction. We said, listen, what is required to resolve the economic situation is to build national consensus on how we equitably share the burden of adjustment. And we felt that in order, the mechanism to do that was the National Tripartite Advisory Council. I think that is fair and that is reasonable. That is the union saying, listen, let us together sit down and work out with business and with government how we equitably share the burden of adjustment. But we went even further. We also developed in 2016 Labour's Economic Alternative Plan, because the unions...
And the acronym for that is LEAP.
Is LEAP.
Essentially looking to leap forward.
That's correct, actually.
Right.
That's the tagline. Let us leap forward. Because the trade union movement wanted to show to Trinidad and Tobago, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, more the people themselves than the government, that the labor movement, the trade union movement actually have ideas and can offer solutions and can offer alternatives to the austerity measures being imposed by the government. And what LEAP sought to do is to create what is called a transformational stimuli, how to stimulate growth. The unions took the position that we cannot cut our way out of the crisis, we need to grow our way out of the crisis. And we use other examples, whether it was the Netherlands, which used a similar model, the United States, Obama used a similar model. We have Portugal, Spain, many of them used that model to come out of the crisis because they recognized that austerity was not working. And so we presented, imagine the trade union movement actually presented this proposal, this Labour's Economic Alternative Plan, to the National Economic Advisory Board, to the National Tripartite Advisory Council, and to the Minister of Finance, leading up to back then the 2016 budget. We sought to emphasize food production, greater investment in food production, infrastructure projects, but not massive mega projects like this highway that they're building, but rather roads where you can engage with small and medium-sized contractors rather than giving multi-billion-dollar contracts to just a few. Tourism and manufacturing, and of course to expand our energy products beyond the current energy products.
And what was the government's response?
Nothing. There was nothing. And you know, it's really unfortunate because here is Labour developing this Labour and economic alternative plan, doing what we're supposed to do, presented at the Economic Advisory Board, presented at the Ministry of Finance, completely ignored. And then when we take action, because of course we can't just leave it there, because we believe very deeply that there is an alternative, and therefore we needed to, and it is required of us to take action in order to get the government to respond to our economic alternative plan. Is
there value in staying in the Tripartite Council?
I think there's still an opportunity for us to through the National Tripartite Advisory Council to consider LEAP. Because LEAP wasn't meant to be just a presentation for budget. It was really meant to be a medium and long-term policy to get Trinidad and Tobago out of the crisis and to achieve growth and to sustain that growth over medium and long term.
But given the fact that all of those recommendations have been ignored, given the constant pulling and tugging with the business community and the call for a boycott, which we'll touch on in a short while, what is the justification? Surely any discussion that takes place at the Tripartite Council is just mama guy to keep you all quiet.
Well, as you can see, we are not quiet. So we took the position that even whilst we continue the discussions at the National Tripartite Advisory Council, that will not stop us from taking the critical mass action that is required to give support to our comrades within that NTAC.
And in relation to that action, let's touch on that briefly. The action being taken by the OWTU, it seems very selective. You all are, I've talked about this before. You all are highlighting, you all are targeting Colm Imbert. You all are targeting Faris Al-Rawi. You all are targeting Stuart Young. The Prime Minister of the country is Keith Rowley. You all afraid to target him?
Not at all, Fazir, and I think you're trying to engage me to expose our tactics and our strategy.
No, the tactics you're afraid him because the diehard masses of the labor movement
if you recall,
are PNM.
No, if
so
you
don't
recall,
want to get
not
vexed.
at all. As a matter of fact, they're very angry and they all on a daily basis calling into the radio programs and so on, attacking us. And of course, you recall some years ago they loved us, but now they hate us. Yeah. It's typical. But if you recall, when we, the candlelight vigil, we had two, not one. One was short and one was tall. That's all I will say for now. Okay. So come next year, bright and early next year, let us see who this taller image would be.
But is it and just quickly on that one, is it an uncomfortable situation for the OWTU to basically find itself in a position where maybe some of the membership, a significant part of the membership, or maybe a not so significant part of the membership, might be supporters of the party in power, as in this case the PNM, and therefore presents a difficult situation? The leader of the OWTU, Ansel Roger, on Labor Day, highlighted and asked the question, it appears that the Prime Minister has the air of just 3 ministers. And again, it was the Beige Brigade, Faris Al-Rawi, Stuart Young, and Colin Imbert. Is it an uncomfortable situation for the OWTU?
No, it's not uncomfortable because it's something we've had for a long time. If you recall, even under the leadership of George Weeks from 1962 to 87, during that period of time, under the OWTU, we had members who would have been PNM, who would have been avid supporters of Eric Williams, and so on. So that we are accustomed to that, but it does not stop the leadership from playing its critical role, understanding the historical and traditional role that the OWTU has played. It doesn't stop the leadership from taking the necessary actions that will move the discussion and the dialogue forward and move the country forward. And you know what is interesting? Notwithstanding, and this is key, that notwithstanding the party membership or the party, those members of our unions who are members of parties, if you notice, whenever we call an action, there's overwhelming support from our membership, regardless of the party, because they understand very clearly that when the OWTU take action, even when that action is against their own party, that action is in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago, and it's in their own interest as well.
We have just about 5 minutes left, and time has gone by so quickly in our discourse.
We'll have to have a part 2.
Probably. I suspect that there will be more parts when we head into 2018, with all this talk of 18 possibly being brighter. I don't know how, but maybe that you might have a different perspective. But let's talk about this boycott action that is being called for.
Sure. Let's first understand the context in which it is happening. We have a society, a post-colonial society, where there seems to be this accepted norm that a small elite must continue to control a vast amount of economic wealth, as well as even have political control, which is similar to the plantation system that we had. And then you had a member of that class making a statement, which was on CNN, in other words, with a certain level of contempt, throwing it in our face is something that I think we all know, but to put it out to us in that way was extraordinarily disrespectful.
But so let's talk about the whole issue. I mean, identifying the different companies that you want to boycott is one thing, but isn't it making the Syrian Lebanese community essentially an easy target?
Well, first, no. I think this is where they will like to take the discussion. That's not what it is, It is about whoever comprised of that 1%, because in every part of the world there is a discussion. The IMF discusses it, World Bank, you have various international NGOs always talk about this global inequality where you have a few owning a lot. That has nothing to do with race. That has to do with the fact that you have an economic system that it perpetuates inequality. And what have been happening in the world, all across the world, is that a widening of gap between rich and poor. That is the discussion. The widening gap between rich and poor in Trinidad and Tobago, where you have a small elite amassing more and more wealth at the expense of small and medium-sized businesses and at the expense of ordinary people. That is what the boycott is about.
Okay, but even with these, if you say it's not, from your point of view, not an issue of targeting a particular ethnic group or whatever.
It's about inequality.
Okay, fair enough, and I take that point. Isn't in the wider society, it is seen as targeting a particular group. Well, even if I understand your point about the 1%. If you have a discussion anyway, you go out the road and you say anybody 1%, people know who you are talking about, and therefore you are tapping into that while saying that you are not.
Yeah, what we are saying is that we need to roll back the power and influence of a small elite, because if we don't, Fazil, it will grow and grow and grow at the expense of small, medium businesses and the expense of ordinary people. And what that inequality does, it creates great social strife in the country. And people are not seeing that this inequality, this gap, a continuing gap between those who have and those who don't, as that continues to grow, as the middle class continues to shrink, and of course being helped by the government poor economic policies, you will create greater and greater social strife. And we're saying, listen, let us provide support to our small and medium-sized businesses. Let us take, remember, it's not just a boycott. We are also saying that this is a campaign for us to support our small and medium-sized businesses, the small vendors, the breakfast shed, and so on.
We have just a couple of minutes left, and I just want to go quickly to the issue of the matter of what has occurred in the courts yesterday with the Bank Insurance and General Workers Union being removed as the bargaining agent for workers at RBC. Isn't this an indicator of more challenges to come for the labor movement in 2018?
It is an indicator of the greater aggression by the employers to ensure that they can exploit workers, and by removing those workers' right. Remember, it's a right.
But they just went to the court. Is the courts ruled in? Or it wasn't RBC management that ruled in Ottawa or Ontario, wherever they are. They went to the courts, and the courts ruled.
But the court ruled against not the union, you know, against the Recognition Board of Trinidad and Tobago. The Recognition Board, which was established under the IRA, gave a ruling and said yes, the union followed the process properly and was able to gain recognition certificate. But here, you know what RBC did? A foreign multinational, let's remember that. This foreign multinational then take the Recognition Board to the High Court for judicial review of their decision. So which means that employers now, in order to deny workers their right under the Constitution, their right under the IRA to be represented by a trade union, they are now aggressively challenging that. And what I would like to say is that this move by the multinational is a contravention and a violation of international human rights norms, because you cannot deny workers the right to be represented by a trade union. That's a fundamental human right, Fazil.
Less than a minute left. And in that sense, what is your outlook for 2018? Very, very brief.
Okay, I think it's going to be a very, very difficult year, Fazil. It's going to be a very difficult year for ordinary working people. When you consider the measures taken by the government, those measures are going to hurt poor and ordinary working people. And it is so unfortunate that once again that the burden of adjustment is falling only on the backs and shoulders of ordinary workers who just simply want to earn enough to to provide for their family. It's going to be a very, very difficult year, but it's going to be a year where you will see increased trade union response. And before I go, I just want to say this because this will be my last appearance before Christmas. Christmas is supposed to represent hope. That's what it's supposed to represent. That was the idea behind it. And I just want to say to Trinidad and Tobago that the labor movement, the trade union movement of this country is indeed the last hope for a better future.
Ozzi Warwick, thanks very much for joining us this morning, spending the first hour with us here on Morning Edition, talking about the many issues on the table as far as the economy and the future heading into 2018. And as per usual, with so many issues on the table, just touching on a number of them, and we probably need part 2, 3, and 4 later on in early 2018 to discuss some of the issues on the table, maybe with other members and other perspectives from the union movement as well. The news coming up, then we move into the second hour of Morning Edition.